It's been a while since I've made a book review. To be fair, this book is 600 pages long, so it took me a while to finish. I finished it last week and I finally have the time today to sit down and talk about it. It had been on my list for a while now, and yeah, every time I encountered someone reviewing the book on TikTok or on Instagram, I always just hear nothing but praise. And it got me very curious because the only other book I've read by this author was like a decade ago when I was in high school, and it was a short book. It wasn't very long. This is the exact opposite. It's thick, it's dense. I think to an extent I was emotionally prepared to read it as well, because yeah, everyone would say, oh, it completely changed my perspective on life. It was devastating, it was heartbreaking. And so I went into reading it with those expectations. Some of those expectations were met and others weren't, but regardless, I really enjoyed it. The book I'll be reviewing today is East of Eden by Steinbeck. The only other book I've read by Steinbeck is Of Mice and Men, and I read that in high school back in 2015, and I remember really enjoying it, being really sad after reading it. And I think because of that novel, I've had a pretty good impression of Steinbeck, even though I haven't read anything else of his. East of Eden was published in 1950, I think, or 1951 or 52, don't remember. I think he considered it his life's greatest work. And makes sense considering how much time he spent on it, all the pages he wrote. It's described as a family saga that spans multiple decades and multiple generations and follows a very historical timeline. It starts off being set in the backdrop of the American Civil War, and then it ends towards the end of the First World War. So yeah, there are all these historical events that are setting the scene for these characters and what unfolds in the story. The story starts off with this really nice flowery imagery of the Salinas valleys in California, and this is where the main characters kind of come together and make choices that intertwine their lives with each other. I remember very early on reading this, being so impressed with the way he writes and how intelligent and eloquent and just very observant he is of the human condition, the human race. He finds these very broad connections, and he has a very historical perspective on things as well, but also then narrow down and focus on the individual and the human. One thing I really appreciate, and I think I appreciated it the most, is just how much time Steinbeck spends on these characters, and he really goes into depth and starts like from the very beginning of their childhoods to adulthood, and he really goes into the complexity that humans have and the kinds of events in their lives that shape them. It was just so nice to read characters that feel like the author has put so much love into, if that makes any sense. As long as the book was 600 pages and as long as it took time to get through it, it needed to be this long for him to explore the themes that he does. Not an easy thing to do as a writer, I think, to create so many characters that are so real and so human and that appeal or resonate with actual people, right? He has such style and elegance in his writing, and does a really good job with imagery and describing scenery, describing the way that the landscape around these characters changes. It was challenging, but also not too challenging, where I was just struggling to get through, like I have with some books. Historical fiction is one of my favorite genres to read, and I really appreciated the moments in the book where he would step out of the story, out of the characters' lives, and have like a few pages dedicated to the context and the history and the events that were unfolding. He does that, and then he gives his input and his observations on the world and where humanity is heading. And yeah, it kind of felt like Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens. Tea break. One of the core themes in the book is good versus evil, and there's a lot throughout the entire story, a lot of biblical parallels. The characters in East of Eden, even like the title itself, right? Eden is supposed to be Salinas Valley, and this place where good and evil are constantly in battle with each other. But yeah, the characters, there are quite a few of them who are modeled after figures from the Bible, like Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. A lot of other themes are explored as well, like one main one was an exploration of free will versus choice, how everything in life that we do is really a choice. Through these different characters, Steinbeck makes so much commentary on humans and morality, and through some characters he shows the wickedness and the evil in humans, and through others he shows how incredibly kind and righteous humans can also be. And yeah, when they meet each other and they come into conflict with each other or interact with each other, symbolizes that clash and the struggle in trying to make the right choice. There's so many life lessons to be learned, which is probably why I think so many people felt that this book was life-changing for them. I wouldn't say I felt the same way. I'm so impressed with his writing, and I'm so excited to read some of his other novels. But yeah, it didn't hit me in the ways that some other novels have. And again, I went into reading this thinking that it would be very emotionally heavy, and it was, but not in the way that I thought it would be. It was more of like a very contemplative heaviness rather than something that just suddenly hits you and you just, and that might have been just the pace of it and how well paced it was. Overall, I thought it was just a really well written book. There's so much to learn from it, actually. I might at some point later on in my life revisit it again and read it again. Yeah, I've highlighted so many quotes from the book that really resonated with me and are lessons that I'd like to keep in mind. No story has power, nor will it last until we feel in ourselves that it is true and true of us. What a great burden of guilt men have. That's all for this book review. It kind of feels like this is my first one just because it's been so long, and I feel like I've lost the flow or the confidence that I was building over time in doing it more frequently. I'm glad to have finished reading another Steinbeck novel, and I think the next one that I'd like to read is Grapes of Wrath. I'm looking forward to that one.